Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to this discussion of my full month working with the original 1986 version of the Mythic Tarot. Oh man, I don't even know where to start with this deck, to be completely honest. I did have a really nice time working with this deck, and I enjoyed it a lot more than, to be completely honest, I thought that I would. So I have a lot of different things to share. This is going to be a little loosey-goosey with the format. I'm going to talk a bit about what I learned about this deck working with it for a month, how I worked with it, what I paired with it, and some resources that sort of helped me to get to know it a little bit better. Before I dive into the cards themselves, because I have recently put up a full flip through of all of the cards and shared a lot about them. Today I'm not going to focus so much on a flip through, but I do want to talk about sort of the majors and sort of the general idea of the suits. But before I do that, I want to talk about the book because, to be completely honest, this is really, I think, the gem of this deck. Now, this artwork, especially in the original 1980, I think it's 86. Maybe I misspoke. Is it 86 or 84? 1980. Why can't I see a number? Actually, though. 1986. Yeah, okay, so I was right. So, in this original version, and this was produced in 1986, it was also printed in around 2001, and I believe that one had a different backing. Now, my copy of this deck is trimmed, as you probably already know. If not, I will definitely link in the cards and in the description box a copy of the video where Dawn Michelle of Boho Tarot actually trimmed and edged this deck for me. But this artwork is really great. But I think I was a little intimidated about the idea of working with a deck that was completely based on Greek myth. And frankly, I'm just making sure. Okay. Frankly, I guess I thought I needed to know the myths really well in order to get some good stuff out of this deck. I will say that I didn't find it to be the most beginner friendly. Once the titles and the borders are trimmed off, some of these cards are very Rider-Waite-Smith looking, particularly through the majors. I think it's really easy to see what card is what for the most part. But then quite a few cards go their own way, particularly through the minor arcana. And I found myself counting pips just to double check which card I was on. That said, once you get to know the myths and the stories a little bit better, it gets easier. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But the book. Okay, so my one gripe I will say with this original book, and I don't know if it's changed in the new Mythic, which has a different version, a different artist has basically recreated all of these images, but in their own, I guess, artistic style. So I don't know if the book format has changed, but the original book isn't really in the order I expected. So it actually goes Fool, Magician, Empress, Emperor, High Priestess, and then it jumps to, so it's out of order, right? Normally you would expect to see the Fool as key 0, then the Magician, then the High Priestess, the Empress, the Emperor. It's kind of all out of order, which I found really frustrating when I was dealing with it. It does sort of straighten itself up starting at around Strength, kind of. So we go Strength, Hermit, Wheel of Fortune, Hanged Man, Death, Devil, Tower, Star, Moon, Sun, Judgment, the World. So these ones are kind of in the right, well, except for that Temperance isn't. It's a mess. Let me just put it that way. It's a mess. And I didn't really see a rhyme or a reason through this part of the guidebook for that. Now, what I did, and some of you guys may be like, oh my gosh, how dare, is I took pencil because it's erasable. And I did write who was the primary character in each of the major arcana cards. And this just helped me when I got to that particular section in the book. So the Fool is Dionysus. The Magician is Hermes. The Empress is Demeter. This one I knew. And the Emperor is Zeus. The High Priestess is Persephone, which is perfect. Chiron as the Hierophant, also perfect, in my opinion. Paris, Athene, and Aphrodite are the characters in the Lover's card. Ares is the character in the Chariot, which was interesting. I almost would have expected to see him in a different card. But it does make sense with the meaning of the card. Athene is Justice, also makes sense. Iris for Temperance. Heracles, or in Roman it would be I believe it's Roman, it would be Hercules, but Heracles is Strength. Kronos for the Hermit. The Mirai, so Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos for the Wheel of Fortune. They are the ones that like weave, measure, and cut the strand of life. Prometheus for the Hanged Man. Hades for death. Pan for the devil, which just was great. Poseidon for the tower. Pandora for the star. Hecate for the moon. Apollo for the sun. And Judgment was wrong card. Hermes again. So Hermes as the psychopomp. So we see Hermes as both the fool, but then also again in the Judgment card in a more like, I guess, a grown-up version of him. And then in the world we have Hermaphroditus, which again also makes sense. Now in the majors, so basically that was one thing that just kind of bugged me through the majors, but the information in this guidebook is so good. For starters, if every guidebook other than the order thing could follow this kind of format, I would love it. For starters, you have an overall description of each of the art, what you see in the artwork of the card. So for example, for the, let's not make a total mess of my cards now, for the lovers, you have a small black and white thumbnail. I think you might get color in the newer versions of the guidebook, but I'm not sure. Anyway, so it describes the art. It says the card of the lovers portrays a handsome, fresh-faced, blonde youth dressed in simple shepherd's garb and holding a crook in his right hand. Like this literally reads as if the creator of the deck was dictating the artworks very specifically to the artist. That's how I read that. Now, there is a couple places where that actually causes trouble because in at least one card, I think it's the King of Pentacles, that little description describes a King of Pentacles with a red beard, which there is in the Ace of Pentacles, but in the King of Pentacles, the King of Pentacles has the beard. One of them has no beard, and he's described as having a beard, and it was really kind of funny. It was like, wait, where's his beard? Maybe it was in a different suit, maybe in the Wands? Yeah, it's in the Wands. In the Wands, he's described as having a red beard. And totally does not. So that kind of threw me, which is kind of funny. But otherwise, the artwork, typically what you read in this section describes what's happening in the artwork. But then what's interesting is that there's also these little tidbits. So it, again, just kind of capturing what's happening in the artwork. So there's a section here. The goddess Hera, spouse and mouthpiece of Zeus, offers the globe of the world, which represents the worldly authority and ethical perspective of Zeus the emperor. And then over here, Athene, who's here, offers a sword, which we will meet later in the suit of swords, and which symbolizes the cutting power of the mind and the keen vision and decisiveness, which belong to the mental realm. And then the goddess Aphrodite, who is here, offers the cup of her love, which we will meet later in the suit of cups, and which is a symbol of relationship. So then after you get the artwork description and all of that great stuff, you then get a full write-up on the card itself. So you hear about the myth and what is represented on the card. It tells you what's the main character or characters we see present in the card and what is happening in this part of the story, like what's happening. And then it talks about the actual meaning of the card itself. And then finally it concludes with a paragraph that starts with, on a divinatory level, the card of the lovers when it appears in a spread, and then it goes on and it explains what it means. Okay, so that's really useful. And I think if you want a deck that you can really get to know and deep dive and learn a lot about the tarot as you go, this guidebook was so good. And there was a couple really great snippets that I encountered when I was doing my daily draws or when I was doing readings for myself, where I literally would write direct quotes from the guidebook because there's a lot of really good wisdom in this. I would say that if you are a fan of the 78 Tarot or 78 Degrees of Wisdom book by Rachel Pollack, you'd probably enjoy this book. It goes into that style of depth. I don't mean to compare the two, but like, I guess that's the kind of, almost like the kind of writing style that this reminded me of. Lots and lots of depth. I can see why it was a popular deck when it was originally produced, and why it's still in print today, albeit with different artwork. Now, I have made no qualms, or I've never hidden the fact that I am not a fan of the art of the new Mythic Tarot. I think it's just a poor copy of this art. I wish they almost would have like just done their own thing stylistically, even if the scenes were the same, if it had just been, I don't know, just different. I don't know. So I really prefer the artwork on this original version of the deck. But as I understand, if the guidebook is the same, there's a lot of really great stuff in here. And so this is not to be overlooked. And I think if you're going to work with the Mythic Tarot, either version, it is definitely worth it to work with the guidebook. Now, I also have the app for the Mythic Tarot, if I remember correctly, which also has the full guidebook. I might be wrong on that, but I think it does. And I think it actually also features this original artwork. So if you can't get a hold, if you really are drawn to this, but you want to really dive into the book, that might be a way that you can do it. Now, I found while working with this that it was helpful to really read the part about the stories so that I could understand what was happening in the card and the perspective of the creators. So I definitely spent a lot of time with this guidebook. Every time I pulled a card, I read the entire entry for that card. And I read the introduction for all of the minor arcana, and I read most of the major arcana just cover to cover, basically. And I got a lot of really great stuff out of that. It definitely deepened my perspective on the tarot, and I feel like it taught me something along the way, which is great. I've been working with the tarot for a lot of years, and just having something that could, like, I don't know, bring something new. That's one of the reasons why I like working with such a variety of decks, right? Is each one kind of brings me something new. But that's what I really, really enjoyed about this. Now, on top of that, I also worked with, as I mentioned in my February show and tell, I also pulled this book into my collection. Now, I grabbed this book, 30-Second Mythology, from Book Outlet. I don't know if it's still available on Book Outlet, so I did not pay full price for this. But it looks like its normal price is €9.99, so I don't know if it's available in North America or if just my copy was from the UK. I don't know. But what's neat about this is that for every single person, so like let's say I wanted to look up Hermes, I could literally just go to the table of contents and find the page on Hermes, and I could go page 72, boop, and then I would have basic, that's the Harpies. Is the contents wrong, or did I read it wrong? That's really funny. Oh, no, that says the Harpies. I literally can't read. Okay, 54 for Hermes. I'm not wearing my glasses. Does it show? Anyway, so here we have Hermes / Mercury, and I understand that to be because Hermes is the Greek and Mercury is the Roman equivalent, basically. So if I wanted to read Hermes' story, this is only a 30-second snippet of Hermes' story. I also definitely encountered different versions of the different myths. This is not uncommon, right? Like this might have one version of Hermes' story, whereas the Mythic Tarot may focus on a different version. But overall, I felt like I was able to just get that little extra bit of understanding. And this was a quicker read, actually, these pages, than the sections in the Mythic Tarot. Because, I mean, you can even just tell, like, there's a lot more to the Mythic Tarot than this 30-second mythology. But I did find it helpful. And every once in a while, if a character was referenced, but it wasn't gone into in any depth, I just checked to see if it was in this book. Sometimes they were, sometimes they weren't. But I did get some interesting tidbits out of that, and it was fun to have a little more to go along with this than just this. And it just kind of helped keep me interested. I also mentioned that I am currently reading through the Percy Jackson series. I thought this would be a fun accompaniment to working with the Mythic Tarot, and it has been. This is definitely like a middle grade, I believe, series of fictional novels. I guess I was too old for these. These weren't out when I was in high school or anything like that, but they're an enjoyable read. I'm probably also going to watch the Percy Jackson movie, which I think is on Disney Plus at some point soon, just again to kind of just tie it all together. I'm currently reading book 3 at the time I'm filming this, but there are 5 books in the original series, so that's been kind of fun. Now, as far as the actual deck itself, as I mentioned, the major arcanas focus on primary characters here. So I went through those when we went through the book, but we have, oh gosh, pop quiz, Lisa. Oh no, I'm not going to try to do it all. I know most of them by heart now, but not all of them. But here we have a lot of the primary or bigger, I guess, more well-known figures in Greek mythology. And I just love the way they're depicted in these cards. But these take us through the major arcana. So these stories are all over the place. These don't all tie together into one story. However, when we get into the minor arcana, each suit follows a different myth or a different section of story. So in the Wands, for example, we have the story of Jason and the Argonauts and his quest to find the Golden Fleece. So that is all happening in the Wand suit. So you get to actually see an entire story go all the way through. The only other deck I've encountered that does this specific thing, or that I can remember, there may be more, but the only one I can remember that does this exact same thing with the suits is the Mythic Fairy Tarot, where each of the minor arcana tells a bit of a story from beginning to end. And that's really cool because you can really see the progression of the minor arcana through the story, right? We know that Jason goes out to get the Golden Fleece. He seeks patronage and help. He has warriors that come along with him. He has to fight a dragon. He gets the Golden Fleece. In the 6 of Wands, he's successful. In the 7, there's some more turmoil. In the 8, there's they're speeding along on their boat. And it just goes through the whole story, right? Which is pretty great. And then you get to the minor arcana and you have, again, key figures, either typically related to that story as well, that feature. So that's kind of cool. In the cup suit, we have the story of Aphrodite and, Psyche and Eros, or Cupid, essentially. I believe that's who he is. And the story of how they became a couple, how she essentially in the... it's really interesting, actually, because in the 3, they're very happy. They're a couple. They get married. In the 4, she's actually letting her, I think they're her sisters, sort of get into her head about the validity of her marriage, because she really can't see the face of her love. So they spend most of their time together at night in the dark. And they just kind of get under her skin. And to me, this sort of is like sowing the seeds of discontent, which is a really interesting take on the 4 of Cups. And then in the 5, she does reveal, she shines a candle on his face, and basically her marriage is ended. So there's this loss. In the 6, it's like the wistful for happy times. And it goes through the story of what she's experiencing. And then we come back to a place where they're able to come back together and get married again. This time, I believe, with Aphrodite's blessing. And it's just neat to get to know the suit and like where we're at in the story through these individual stories. So you see that in all of the suits. There's a different story happening in the swords, and again, another one in the pentacles. So this is what I think is one of the things that makes this a really standout and interesting deck. But to be honest, most of what I actually enjoyed was pulling a card and working with the guidebook. So let's give this a little shuffle, because I want to show you how I paired this, what I paired with it, and sort of how that worked out. So I did a couple different things with this deck throughout the month, but the first thing I did is sort of work with it the way that I have been working with a lot of my decks lately, and that is I pulled an oracle deck. So I started out with the Tulku Oracle, this is the deck that's currently, well, at the time I'm filming this, it's currently funding on Kickstarter, and it's just a really meaty, in-depth sort of oracle deck. I found these worked really, really well together. Let's get zoomed in and sort of straightened out here. These worked really well together. So I would pull one of these cards and I would read the message. And then based on that message, I would ask a question, and I would pull a card over here on this side. And then based on that card, I would ask a follow-up question, and I would pull a card on this side. And I just found that this worked really, really well. I did work with reversals with this deck because there are some really beautiful messages when you're working with this deck with reversals. But I did not work with reversals at all, nor did I feel like I needed to or should with the Mythic Tarot. And I'm finding it really interesting because my relationship with working with... Are these all reversed? No. Okay. My relationship with working with reversals has been an evolving thing, especially lately, where sometimes I feel like I want to, sometimes I don't. It totally depends on the deck, right? But I've just found that the depth of meaning in the Tulku Oracle played really, really nicely with the Mythic Tarot, which had a similar sort of slow, deep feel to it. I did not feel like these were the kinds of decks, either one of these, where I would just like pull it out and like throw cards on the table like I would with so many decks. This is definitely a slower deck, as is the Tulku Oracle. And in that way, I feel like energetically, they just worked really, really well together. Then I did a similar thing with a Curious Oracle, and I think this was probably my favorite pairing. Now, a Curious Oracle, I keep meaning to try to get the guidebook. There is a digital guidebook you can order from the creator, but her shop is on vacation mode, and I don't know what the story is there. I don't know if it's coming back. My edition, I believe, is the 3rd edition of this deck. Since then, there's been another edition. But this deck, oh my gosh, this one worked really well, and in a way sort of clarified, I think, the Mythic Tarot a bit better. So with this one, I found I did the exact same thing. I found like these messages, like they almost like gave me a cleaner jumping off point. As much as I loved using the Tulku Oracle and the way that it really paused me and had me slow down and take in depth, I felt like my readings were a little bit more cohesive when I flipped to using the Curious Oracle. And I also think that just like the imagery worked really, really well with the Mythic Tarot. So I really enjoyed, oh look, there's the same image as what's on the backs of the cards. And I love this little oracle deck. There's a lot to it. It does have a system all its own. Again, I wish I could get a hold of the digital guidebook, and I need to keep an eye out for the Etsy shop so I can get that in the future. I keep forgetting and then missing it. But I just found that this really played super well, and I got some very like synchronistic messages working with this deck along with these. And I found that the readings that I got were just really meaningful and helpful and supportive. So I really, really enjoyed pairing these. And then the last deck that I paired with this one, unless I'm forgetting one, I might be. I don't think I am. The last one that I paired with these was actually the Color Mage Oracle. And this was really great because what I found myself doing was I split this deck. So I edged my Color Mage Oracle to match the chakras that is associated with it. And there's also a couple of cards that are chakraless because there's a white card. There's also a black card, and somewhere in here there's also a like gray card or smoke or something like that. So basically what I was doing was I broke the deck up into root through heart chakra in one pile. So that's that pile. Hopefully we're focusing. Are we focusing? There we go. And then I broke the other half, or the other part of the deck. So this portion would be my more day-to-day message. Like, what do I need to be aware of? Right? So I would pull a card. And here we have gold abundance, right? So I'd be like, okay, I need to be aware of money. I need to be thinking of my material possessions and like how I'm going to work with those today. And then I would pull a second card, and this is sort of the more spiritual message. What do I need to be aware of above that? Like thinking about communication, my higher self, like being in alignment with my ideals, things like that. And I would pull a card for the upper chakras. And here I have Archangel invoke the guardians. So I might look at that message and go, okay, in what way do I need support from spirit, right? And so then I would take my Mythic Tarot, and this was so great with this deck because it's trimmed and because of the size, and I would pull a card for each of these questions. So in what way do I need to focus on my material world today? Oh, look, I got the Two of Pentacles, and look how beautifully that sits on this card, right? So I got the Two of Pentacles. And so I need to focus on like balancing my resources, right? So not maybe overspending in any category, being aware of limitations, like not staying away from excess, right? Keeping things in balance. And in what way do I need to get advice or support from spirit today? And I'd pull a card for that. And here we have the Seven of Cups. And to me, this would look, she's literally praying. Like this just worked so beautifully, and it was so fun to do, to go, okay, well, I need to like actually get help, maybe not daydreaming, not like get help with my focus maybe, so I'd ask for support in that way. But it's so cool. It was so fun to me to actually lay the card right on top of the Color Mage Oracle and work with it that way. I think for that reason, I will probably be pretty excited to pair this with decks that are trimmed, or tarot in a tin-sized decks or smaller decks. Like, can you imagine this one? Sorry, a little bit of a tangent, but like with the Curious Oracle, that's another one that's in that great size, right? So like, how cool is it to just like pop a card, almost like the houses in Lenormand, right? Like right on that spot. And like think about what that means, and like how to, oh, it's so cool, right? Anyway, sorry, that's a side note, but that was fun. And that deck came in, I believe, to my collection while I was actively working with the Mythic Tarot, so I was eager to put it into play. But it just worked really, really good to split this up like that into upper and lower chakras and then work with it like that. I just felt like I got a lot of really great combos this way, just looking at upper and lower, upper and lower. Upper and lower. So here it's let love, and then this is about old thought. So I found that with working with the upper chakras tended to be a little bit less tangible, and the lower chakras, and including the heart, tended to be a little bit more tangible, more practical. And so it balanced the reading in a way, and I really had a lot of fun doing that. So that was a really fun way that I worked with the Color Mage Oracle alongside the Mythic Tarot. So I guess if I were to share with you guys what I learned during this experience with the Mythic Tarot, I would say that if I have decks that I feel like I just haven't bonded with, or I haven't felt a connection to for some reason, or there's been something keeping me from working with it on that more regular level, spending an entire month with it and really deep diving into that particular deck, it definitely gives me an opportunity to develop a relationship, and then decide what I would do with that. I now know that the Mythic Tarot is one that I really appreciate for the wisdom and knowledge it offers, but it feels very cerebral and it feels very educational in a way. It felt like a month of studying the tarot through the lens of Greek mythology, which makes perfect sense. But it didn't feel quite as universally applicable the way that I might think of a different deck, like a Rider-Waite-Smith clone that I could just slap on the table and read about whatever. While this did give me excellent readings no matter what I asked it, and in that way was very flexible, it just felt heavier. In the way that I guess I would say runes, working with runes feels heavier to me. It just doesn't feel like something that I want to fly by the seat of my pants with. Like I want to take it seriously. And that's kind of how I felt about working with the Mythic Tarot. But I definitely really enjoyed working with all of these different decks together and just kind of seeing what they could teach me and playing and getting to know them all a little bit better. I definitely learned a heck of a lot more about Greek mythology through this whole process, and would definitely recommend doing if you have a deck sitting in your collection right now that you have been like, I don't want to take the time. Just commit to a month with it. Spend time, do your daily draws, read bits of the guidebook, like learn a little bit about the theme of the deck. In this case, I studied a little bit of Greek mythology. I didn't go too crazy deep, right? But I got in there and I played and I learned. And I think that kind of stuff just opened it up to me, and it makes it possible now for me to pull this out and work with it if or when I feel the need. I definitely think this is a deck that will stay in my collection because I think it's an important part of tarot history, but I don't think it's going to be one I'm going to reach for all the time. So that was my experience working with the Mythic Tarot for a full month. I am really interested to hear your guys' thoughts below. Is this a deck that you have and you work with? What has your experience been like? And if you feel like sharing, is there a deck that's currently sitting in your collection right now that you're kind of neglecting, that you don't want to, maybe it's intimidating to you in some way? Can you think of a deck that might benefit from spending a full month with it or maybe more? Let me know. Sound off in the comments down below. I look forward to hearing from you all. As always, do remember to click the like button if you enjoyed this video or found some value in it. Please do subscribe if you're new here, and don't forget to hit the little bell so you're notified of my future videos and live streams. Thank you again so much for joining me, and may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye, guys.